Farmer Tom here. Welcome to the Farmer Tomcast. Today on our ongoing series about cannabis and hemp education, we've got John Dvorak. How's it going, John?
Doing great, Farmer Tom. How are you?
Good. Enjoying this nice weather. The world wants to hear your story and all the things you do for hemp, so I'm going to hand you the microphone and let her rip.
All righty. Well, I really appreciate that. And let's see. Here we go. Let's see if I can share my screen with everybody right here. And there we go. I'm going to be talking about the past, present, and future of hemp today on Farmer Tom's Farmcast podcast. And I really appreciate the opportunity. I've been a cannabis consumer for over 40 years. I've used it for anxiety, pain. It helped me quit a pack-a-day cigarette habit over 25 years ago. And 15 years ago, it helped me stop drinking alcohol, which has been a really positive influence on my life. In the early 1990s, I joined Mass Cann NORML and helped organize the Boston Freedom Rally for several years as we worked to legalize marijuana. I realized when I was up in the Boston area that there's a lot of hemp up there, a lot of hemp history with the maritime history and all the sailing ships they used to have. So I started documenting the hemp history and putting that on my website, hempology.org, where people can go out and see all sorts of great hemp history. I wrote articles for numerous publications, Hemp Times, Hempworld magazine, 1000 Watts magazine, the Boston Phoenix, which is an old Boston publication. And I've also edited Hemp magazine in the late 1990s. I put together a traveling hemp museum, which I have a lot of hemp artifacts and samples that I show people all the different things that you can do with hemp and try to educate people that way. And I put together a Cannabis Curriculum, which is a talk that I give to college students to give them ideas on how they can apply their college classes and their studies to cannabis hemp, industrial hemp, medical marijuana, and the drug war. There's also so many different topics that they could cover related to cannabis hemp. So that's part of the Cannabis Curriculum. But today I'm going to talk about hemp. Before I can do that, we have to know, what is hemp? Well, plain and simple, hemp is cannabis. You can make all sorts of really environmentally friendly and healthy products out of the stalk, seed, and root of any cannabis plant. So that's pretty simple, right? Unfortunately, our governments got involved, and when they legalized hemp in the 2018 Farm Bill, they define hemp as cannabis with not more than 0.3% THC. I call this a catch 422 because it hamstrings the hemp industry, it hurts American farmers and consumers, and it reeks of reefer madness. If you're a hemp grower out there and your crop tests more than zero, or it has 0.3% THC or more, you've got what's called hot hemp. And if you have hot hemp, you either have to mitigate your crop and process it to lower the THC level, or you have to destroy your crop. And if you can believe that, they're actually making American farmers destroy perfectly good crops because of this illogical and hard-headed rule that they put in there. I don't care what our government says, all cannabis is hemp. The next time you're cleaning some marijuana, you get a little stem, a little bitty stem. Take a look at that. That's a piece of hemp. And if you break that stem, you'll see these little bitty fibers. Those are the bast fibers they use to make rope, paper, clothing, biodegradable plastics. If you get a seed in your marijuana, you can either plant that seed and grow another high THC marijuana plant, or you can pop it in your mouth for a healthy, tasty hemp seed snack. So all cannabis is hemp. We got any CBD growers out there, or people that are growing medical marijuana, or even for the recreational market? What do you do with your stalks? Right now, that's a waste product for most growers. It's either stacking up in their barn, or they're paying somebody to get rid of it, or they have to do something with it. Well, there are companies out there collecting the stalks from CBD grows and from marijuana grows and turning them into hemp products. So there's a lot going on out there. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of hemp. Hemp originated in Asia over 10,000 years ago. And back then, they didn't have any arbitrary limits set on the plant. They used the entire cannabis plant. They used the long bast fibers for nets, wove that into nets for fishing, or bowstrings for hunting, wove it into clothing. All throughout Asia, people were married wearing hemp clothing. And when they died, they would cover them with a hempen shroud. This is how much respect they had for that plant. Some of the first paper ever made contained hemp fiber. They took the inner part of the stalk, the woody herds, and they would burn that for fuel. They ate the seeds for nutrition, or they burned hemp seed oil in lamps. And of course, they used the flower for therapeutic or religious purposes. Cannabis spread around the entire planet, and almost every language has its own word for cannabis or hemp. The Chinese call it ma, and they've came up with their own symbol for hemp. It's right there. It's a building with a couple cannabis plants hanging upside down to dry. In prehistoric Japan, they found a cave drawing depicting cannabis being brought over to Japan in a boat. And for several hundred years before cotton was introduced to Japan, hemp and silk were two of the main fibers used for clothing in Japan. And they came up with this beautiful pattern. It's a geometric representation of hemp leaves. It's called an asanoha, and ASA is the Japanese word for hemp. So it's tradition in Japan to give children clothing with the asanoha pattern on it so that they will grow tall and strong, just like hemp. Nowadays, you can find the asanoha pattern all over the place on wallpaper, building facades, dishes, and clothing. The Japanese rugby team, the World Cup rugby team, their jersey a couple years ago had the asanoha pattern on it because they're fast and strong. Hemp plays a key role in the Shinto religion. You can see this woman in the upper right-hand corner, that's a huge hemp rope that's draped across the entrance of a shrine. That's called a shimenawa, and that is an act of ritual purification. The Japanese also tie shimenawa around sacred trees for protection. They were able to weave the hemp fiber into rugged clothing for the Japanese farmers, but they also were able to make beautiful robes and kimonos out of hemp. And the Emperor of Japan still wears a ceremonial robe that contains hemp fiber. That's very cool. Before World War II, there were thousands of hemp farmers in Japan. Unfortunately, after the war, when the Allies rewrote Japan's constitution, America exported reefer madness, and they made marijuana illegal in Japan. And this decimated the hemp culture. Fortunately, it's coming back slowly thanks to some dedicated Japanese hempsters. In the section in Asia, right where Vietnam and Laos come together, there's a group of women called the Hmong hemp weavers, and they're still weaving hemp fabric the traditional way that's been passed down for generations. And in Nepal, they collect cannabis stalks and weave the bast fiber into these beautiful Himalayan hemp products. And we know that Nepal is where some of the best hashish in the world comes from. So I can guarantee you that the stalks that they're using to make these Himalayan hemp products has way more than 0.3% THC. And the take-home point here is that the cannabinoid content of the flower is independent of the fiber quality in the stalk. Everything's related to genetics, what you plant, geography, where you plant, and the method of cultivation, how you plant it. In ancient Rome, they used cannabis root for pain and gout. And in India, there's a complex of caves. It's called the Ellora Caves. They built a bunch of temples in these caves over 1,500 years ago. And they realized that the artifacts in these caves were very well preserved. And when they looked into it, they realized that they had put a hemp plaster on the walls of these caves, and that helped regulate the temperature and humidity and preserve the artifacts. And we're seeing a lot of the same characteristics today with building materials, hempcrete, and other things. So history is repeating itself. During the age of sail, for over 300 years, hemp was at its peak influence around the globe. Sailing ships were so important. They're so important for commerce and trade, exploration, and warfare. The huge armadas of the day bestowed vast wealth and power on the countries that had them. And these sailing ships required thousands and thousands of pounds of cannabis hemp rope, rigging, line, anchor cables. The huge canvas sails were woven out of cannabis hemp. The word canvas is derived from the word cannabis for this very reason. Early colonists in America knew how important hemp was. So some colonies put a bounty on hemp to encourage its cultivation, and in some colonies, you could even pay your taxes with hemp. A couple of our early presidents, Washington and Jefferson, both grew hemp, so they knew how important it was. But here's the thing. Hemp cultivation in America never became widespread because Russia was growing lots and lots of really high quality hemp. And it was at a low price. So American farmers could not compete with Russian hemp. And as a result, we imported thousands and thousands of tons of hemp fiber from Russia and then wove it into canvas sails or spun it into hemp ropes in these long wooden buildings called rope walks. By 1800, there were over 150 rope walks all up and down the eastern seaboard. In Boston, right across the street from the Boston Common, where the public garden is today, there was a complex of rope walks. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote a beautiful poem titled The Rope Walk. He talks about the method for spinning hemp fiber into rope, as well as some of the various uses of rope. Down south of Boston, the Plymouth Cordage Company, that was one of the largest rope manufacturers in the world for over 100 years. They had a rope walk there, and they took it apart and moved it down to Connecticut to the Mystic Seaport Museum, put it back together. Now you can check out a real old rope walk and see how they twisted hemp fiber into rope. Or you can visit Boston, go to the U.S. Navy Yard in Charlestown, climb aboard the USS Constitution, the oldest commissioned warship in the world, and just imagine all the hemp that was used for all the rigging, all the rope, the sails, and the caulking that they would hammer between the planks to help keep the ship watertight. That's called oakum, they use for caulking. The Navy built their own rope walk, not out of wood, but out of granite. It's a 1/4 mile long at the Navy Yard. It's granite walls and slate roof. They recently renovated the rope walk, so now you could actually live in an old rope walk in Boston. I want to turn your listeners, Farmer Tom, onto a treasure hunt. I want people to go out there and look for feral hemp, some wild hemp that was grown during colonial times. I'm thinking if we can find it growing along a old fence line or a creek bed, a stand of hemp that's been reseeding itself all these years, acclimating itself to the New England climate. And I think that would be really great to be able to introduce these hundreds of year old genetics into the modern hemp industry. During the Renaissance, the printing press supercharged the Renaissance by making knowledge and information more available to the common person. And one of the first books mass produced was the Gutenberg Bible. and they used hemp fiber on this bad boy because it's archival quality, it doesn't turn brittle, and it has stood the test of time. Down in Pennsylvania in the 1700s, they did grow a fair amount of hemp down there. And a colleague of mine, Les Stark, goes around to the hemp mills. At the hemp mills in Pennsylvania, they use these huge conical stones called hemp stones to crush the stalks. Les goes around to the hemp mills, the old locations, and identifies these hemp stones, and he's trying to preserve them for the future. The Conestoga and schooner wagons that explored and settled our western frontier were covered with cannabis hemp. And up in Vermont in 1830, good old Thaddeus Fairbanks was running the St. Johnsbury Hemp Company. And he realized they needed a better method to weigh all the hemp that was being grown in Vermont and upstate New York. So he invented a platform scale that you could just pull the wagon load of hemp up on it and weigh it. That was very successful, and the Fairbanks Scale Company is still in business today. During the Civil War, a battle was raging around the Masonic College in Lexington, Missouri. That's right on the Missouri River. Soldiers found a whole stack of hemp bales that were waiting to be shipped downstream. They grabbed these hemp bales and pushed them up a hill as a movable breastwork, and they won what came to be known as the Battle of the Hemp Bales. And they have reenactments ever so often, and I'd love to check that out sometime. In 1866, the first transatlantic cable was stretched from North America to Europe. This ushered in a new era of telecommunications. And this cable, it had a copper wire core, and it was covered with latex, hemp fiber, and steel. And they used hemp fiber because it's strong and flexible. Some of the great artists of the day may have painted their masterpieces on hemp canvas using hemp seed oil-based paint. I've heard this said, but I've never seen any hard evidence to support that. And that's why we need more research into hemp history. I've just gone over a few tidbits, a few highlights, but there's so much more out there to be researched, uncovered, and shared. And that's why I created hempology.org. I've got over 200 digitized books, papers, articles, images, all related to cannabis and hemp, for anybody to go out, read up, learn, and share what they find with other people. So you may be thinking to yourself after hearing all this, wow, hemp was really, really important for a really, really long time. And you'd be right. Whatever could have happened to take the luster off of such a gem? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's common knowledge or common belief within the cannabis community that they made hemp illegal in the 1930s because hemp posed a threat to major industrialists like Hearst, Mellon, and DuPont. People say they were afraid of hemp, so they wanted to make it illegal. People love conspiracy theories, and this one sounds plausible, but I have found no hard evidence to support this. In my opinion, hemp cultivation in America declined throughout the 1800s based on a confluence of social and economic factors that decreased both the supply and demand for true hemp. And that's what they called cannabis hemp back then, true hemp, because there's a lot of other plants you can use that have fiber that can be made into string or rope or inexpensive bagging. These include sisal from Mexico, jute from China and India, and Manila hemp from the Philippines. So all throughout the 1800s, imports of these fibers flooded into America. Oftentimes the price was lower than cannabis hemp, and also in some instances, the end result, the end use of these fibers was served better by Manila hemp or jute than it was by using cannabis hemp. So this really decreased the demand for true hemp. The invention of the cotton gin decreased the demand for canvas for hemp sails and hemp homespun clothing. The invention of the steam engine and steamships severely decreased the demand for hemp rope and sails. So there are a lot of factors really hammered hemp in the 1800s. And even into the early 1900s, most of the hemp that was grown in America was processed by hand. And at the lower left, this slide, you can see this gentleman crushing the hemp stalks with a hand brake. This is very slow, inefficient, and expensive. So that really held hemp back. And back in the 1800s, there were limited uses for hemp. Really, the only thing they were using hemp for was the long bast fiber, turning that into twine, rope, caulking, and inexpensive bagging like burlap sacks. They weren't utilizing the hemp herds back then. We know how versatile those are today. And the seed, we know that's a superfood and so good for you. They weren't really utilizing that. There was a small market for bird feed that they were using hemp seed for, but not as a human food. They did create a hemp industry in Kentucky in the early 1800s, and that was pretty successful for a while. And that peaked in 1850 when they grew about 200,000 acres of hemp. That may sound like a lot, but compared to the millions of acres of other crops that were being grown at the time, corn, cotton, wheat, and rice, hemp cultivation was just a drop in the bucket. So hemp cultivation continued to decline throughout the 1800s, and by the turn of the century, only a few thousand acres were being grown in the entire country. And then by the early 30s, only a few hundred acres were being grown. And this is when reefer madness got into full swing, and the Marijuana Tax Act was railroaded through Congress in 1937 with minimal testimony from doctors about the medicinal uses of cannabis or from testimony from the hemp people. But that one reason for that is because the hemp industry was basically non-existent back then. They included hemp in the Marijuana Tax Act because it is cannabis after all, but not because they were afraid of it. They included it because they were trying to stigmatize the entire plant. The Marijuana Tax Act was a racist law aimed at controlling blacks and other minorities. And it did a really good job because it's decimated several groups of society for decades. And it's been a really, really horrible thing. So hemp cultivation died off on its own in the 1800s, and the Marijuana Tax Act was the final nail in its coffin, right? Well, just so happened, a few years later, World War II rolled around, and when the Japanese invaded the Philippines, they cut off our supply of Manila hemp. And imports of jute from India and China were also curtailed. So our government was like, oh, dang, we need fiber, we need rope, we need string, we need parachute webbing for the war. What are we going to do? Oh, let's grow hemp. Yeah, why not? So they started the Hemp for Victory campaign. They produced a cheesy 10-minute movie to encourage farmers to grow hemp, and grow it they did all throughout the Midwest, in Minnesota, Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana, Iowa. They grew hemp all over the place, and they built factories to process the hemp. And they hired women to work in these factories. These were some of the first women hempsters. And this helped kickstart the women's movement. So the Hemp for Victory campaign was very successful. Unfortunately, as soon as the war was over, they shut the program down, sold all the factories, and basically made hemp illegal again. This sets off a new treasure hunt, this time for victory hemp. People are going around to the old cultivation sites where they grew hemp in World War II and grabbing there's still a lot of wild feral hemp growing remnants from the Hemp for Victory campaign. People are grabbing some of that hemp and incorporating that into the modern hemp industry. So that's really neat. So that's a little hemp history Now I want to talk about modern hemp history. This started in 1990 when Jack Herer wrote his seminal book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes. A whole generation of hempsters, including myself, cut our teeth on this book. It's got all the different uses of hemp, as well as its rich history. It's a wonderful book. Chris Conrad wrote another great book, Hemp, Lifeline to the Future. Don Wirtschafter started the Ohio Hempery. He had a mail order catalog with dozens of really nice products. Now, back in the 90s, hemp wasn't legal to grow it in America, so you had to import it from China or Europe. Rob Youngman started the Menashe Tash company making hemp clothing. He's now making clothing under the Young Maven label. Michael and David Bronner started adding hemp seed oil to their soaps. You can still find Dr. Bronner's all over the place. So support the hemp industry and buy some of their soap. Sean House has been making hemp pretzels down in Pennsylvania, Hempsels, for over 25 years, and he's still doing that. Ben Dronkers started the Hemp Flax company in Holland, and they're still going strong today. So one of the things is, a lot of the people back then, we all loved hemp, but many of us, we loved all uses of the cannabis plant. We understood how good medical marijuana was, and we also knew how bad the drug war was, and we believed in the right for adult consumption. And during some of the old hemp conventions, there was a lot of consumption going on, trust me. But we also had a lot of serious discussions about separating the rope from the dope. We knew we were going to be out there lobbying Congress, trying to convince conservative farmers to grow hemp. So we didn't want to come across as a bunch of pot-smoking hippies, although that's what several of us were. But unfortunately, when the government finally got around to legalizing hemp in 2018, they took this separation of rope from dope to extremes. That's why they created that 0.3% THC limit. Because I don't care what they say, you can't separate the rope from the dope. You can make rope out of dope, stalks anyway, cannabis stalks. So we had a lot of great people in the movement, a lot of great women. Mary Cann created Hempworld magazine and Hemp Pages directory. Candy Penn was the director of the Hemp Industries Association for several years. She did a great job. Ruth Shamai up in Canada made some wonderful hemp seed power bars. Carolyn Moran made tree-free hemp paper. Barbara Philippone and her daughter, Summer Star, have been making hemp fabric for over 25 years, and they're still at it. And Mickey Norris has been working side by side with Chris Conrad for all these years, promoting hemp and fighting prohibition. And I wouldn't be here today without the love and support of my wife, Pam, who's put up with my hemp obsession for all these years and really provided so much support to me that I really, really appreciate it. So during the 90s, hemp started picking up steam. In 1996, Pam and I went to Amsterdam for the Cannabis Cup. And I was there to cover it for Hemp magazine because they had a hemp expo. They had several hemp companies there. Most of them were American, but some were from Germany and Holland in Europe. And this was one of the very beginnings of the modern hemp industry, at least for the trade show aspect of it. So I wrote an article about that, the 96 Cannabis Cup for Hemp magazine. You can find that out on the internet. In 1998, Paul Galen put on the Santa Cruz Hemp Expo. This was an awesome event with dozens of vendors, thousands of attendees over the weekend. And Paul produced a documentary of this weekend called Hemp Hooray that you can find out on YouTube. So you should check that out. Also in 1998, this is when Canada legalized commercial hemp farming. So Canadian farmers started growing it, which was great, which meant we didn't have to import everything from overseas. And what mainly back then, a lot of companies were producing hemp seed or grain, as they call it, because that required less infrastructure than fiber, than creating, processing the stalk to produce hemp fiber or hemp clothing. So a lot of hemp seed oil companies were started up, like Greg Harriet with Hempola, Sean Crew with Hemp Oil Canada. So the hemp industry was really rocking in the late 80s. We're importing hemp from Canada, and mainly hemp seed, hemp grain. So of course the DEA could not put up with this. They declared that hemp seed was illegal in 1999, and they stopped a container load of seed at the border. We sued the DEA, got a temporary injunction, and we eventually won, which was great, but it took several years. And in the meantime, it just totally destroyed the hemp industry because it just created so much confusion for the farmers in Canada, for American consumers, and for American companies trying to obtain this raw material to make products. So the DEA was really, did everything they could to mess with us. In 2000, Alex Whiteplume planted hemp on his reservation in South Dakota and the Pine Ridge Reservation, because he wanted to help make his tribe self-sufficient. Of course, the DEA couldn't put up with that either. So a few months later, they came in typical jackboot thug manner and literally pulled the plants up out of the ground and threatened Whiteplume with prison if he planted hemp again. What they didn't realize was they came pretty late in the season, and a lot of the plants had already gone to seed. So when they pulled them up, the seed got scattered, and next year they had quite a few hemp volunteers. So we got a lot of great history out there, a lot of great people. It's been the honor of my life to be associated with these people. And I also want to talk about some of the people that aren't with us anymore that helped start this industry. They are so important. Jack Hare, unfortunately, passed away several years ago. Larry Dupree was the ultimate Canadian hempster. So funny, so nice. We lost two of the leaders in the hemp plastic industry, Noel Van Schaik and Mark Linday, who both were gone too young. Gatewood Galbraith, the Kentucky firebrand, who spent years fighting for personal freedom and hemp. Anita Roddick, she started the Body Shop chain of body care products, very, very successful. And she was one of the first people to introduce hemp seed oil into the mainstream. Steve and Kathy Levine did so much for the Hemp Industries Association and for Dr. Bronner's. Bike Mike Sutherland, he rode his bicycle all throughout China, working with farmers, helped them grow hemp. Dennis Cicero started the Galaxy Global Eatery. It's a restaurant in New York City that featured hemp foods. Jeffrey Stonehill, a muse and poet, and just a beautiful person. And Charlotte Figge, who became famous when CNN featured her on a show about CBD and how it helped her with her seizures. So many people are no longer with us. We have to remember them as we move forward into the future, because that's where we're going. In the future of hemp, how are we going to get there, and what are we going to do? And this is where I need your help, because we're creating an entire industry from the ground up. Because hemp was only legalized a few years ago, we're creating all the infrastructure. The machinery to harvest and process hemp has to be reinvented or improved. We have to increase the demand for hemp so that our farmers will grow more hemp. This is another catch 422. Our farmers aren't just going to start growing hemp willy-nilly unless there's a demand for their crop. But how can there be a demand for the crop unless you have the raw material to make the products? So that's this whole chicken and egg situation that we have to work our way through it. So everybody needs to use more hemp. That's how we increase the demand. Hemp business cards. making your business cards out of hemp paper is one of the easiest ways to show your customers that you care about the environment and hemp. If you have marketing t-shirts, giveaway t-shirts, make them out of hemp fiber, like my t-shirt. Super soft and wonderful. Put your brand on it. Packaging is such a problem in the cannabis and the marijuana industry. So much waste. Well, why not make it out of hemp paper, hemp cardboard, or biodegradable hemp plastic doob tubes? That would be another good marketing angle, to have your cannabis product packaged inside a hemp package. If you're building something, if you're adding onto your business or your home, use hemp. Hemp is one of the best building materials out there, and there's so many great things about it. Hempcrete is one of the big new products. It's a mixture of the hemp herds, sand, lime, and water. It makes a wonderful building material that regulates humidity and temperature. Termites won't eat it. It's mold resistant, and you can put a blowtorch up against it for several minutes. So it's technically fireproof. It's amazing. There's hemp wood out there. It looks just like regular wood, but it's made out of hemp. You can have hemp wood flooring, paneling, furniture. It's amazing. Hemp insulation. It's better than that pink, itchy, and scratchy fiberglass crap. Hemp particle board. Stronger, more flexible than wood particle board. Inside your building, put down hemp carpet. Put up hemp curtains. Cover your furniture with hemp upholstery. You can even make your countertops out of hemp composite. They have all of these products out there right now. So it's up to us to buy hemp, to use hemp, to wear hemp, to eat hemp. Hemp is the new superfood. The humble hemp seed is chock full of protein, fiber, vitamins and minerals, and essential fatty acids. You always hear on TV and the news, to get your omegas and your essential fatty acids, eat fish, eat salmon, take fish oil. No, eat hemp. That's right, eat hemp. It's better for you and much better for the fish. And there's so many great hemp foods out there. It's hemp milk, shelled hemp seed. We eat that by the pound, sprinkle it on our cereal. Hemp power bars, hemp pretzels, hemp protein powder. It's amazing. And the hemp seed oil, the emollients in hemp seed oil make great body care products that help moisturize and heal your skin. So there's all sorts of lotions out there, Dr. Bronner soaps, shampoos, and salves. I use a cannabis root salve, Hemp Ease, that's made up in the Northwest, up where you are, Farmer Tom, by the wonderful people of Hemp Ease. And I use that, my cannabis root salve, from stem to stern. I just love it. So, well, like I said, we're at the beginning. We're creating an entirely new industry from the ground up. And I believe it will be $1 trillion industry in the future. But it's going to take a lot of hard work. Cannabis is disruptive. And what I mean by that, sort of like Uber has disrupted the taxi cab industry and Airbnb disrupted the hotel industry. We're seeing medical marijuana and CBD is disrupting the healthcare industry as people heal themselves with these safe and effective and inexpensive cannabinoids. On the hemp side, I see hemp disrupting the construction industry by creating all of these green, environmentally friendly products. And I see it disrupting the healthcare industry, the body, the nutrition industry, as people eat these healthy hemp foods and use great body care products. So there's so many wonderful aspects of this, and it is a great time to get in on the ground floor of the hemp industry, but it's going to take a lot of hard work because the government is still going against us. This 0.3% limit on THC on hemp crops, that has to go away. That has to either be significantly raised or removed. And we have to remove marijuana. We have to stop classifying that as a Schedule I narcotic. That is really hamstringing the entire cannabis industry. So until we get fair laws, hemp and cannabis and medical marijuana will not reach their full potential. So that's why I need your help out there to change the laws, to get fair laws, to use more hemp, and to take us into the future. So it's been a pleasure talking to you, Farmer Tom. I know you didn't get to talk much. We're going to talk now, but that's the end of my hemp history talk, and I'm going to stop the screen share right now, and we can chat.
Sounds great, John, man. And well, my format really is to let everybody get their story out and things they're passionate about. And definitely you're passionate about hemp curriculum and educating the world on all the benefits of hemp and cannabis. Man, you really kind of covered it all. I don't know how many questions I got. You're super thorough. I want to, I guess at this point, unless you got some other things you'd like to talk about, I'll let you plug yourself and your favorite groups. Let's spread the good word about cannabis hemp around the world.
Yes, sir. Well, the main plug is hempology.org. That's my hemp history website, and that's where people can find a lot of old digitized books and articles, as well as I've also got a page on there for my Cannabis Curriculum, which is all the different slides. Today I focused on hemp, but my Cannabis Curriculum goes into a lot of other topics, including medical marijuana, a lot of the social issues related to prohibition and the drug war, and just trying to get people to understand, and even entertainment, arts and entertainment, how cannabis has influenced arts and entertainment, like Louis Armstrong and people like that over the years, and Willie Nelson, some of our heroes. Cannabis was a big part of their life. So we need to let people know that and understand how cannabis has woven itself into society.
Would you consider coming back on my show and giving in cannabis talk?
Anytime, Farmer Tom. I'd love to give my Cannabis Curriculum talk sometime. And I also have a bunch of pictures from my traveling hemp museum. If you ever wanted me to come on and just sort of give people I could walk through some pictures and just show them a bunch of different products that I've been collecting over the last 25 years. And just to show them all the different great things you can make out of hemp. Sounds good.
All right. Like any final words, any kind of words of wisdom you want to put out there to the world?
Use hemp. Be nice. Be nice to each other. That's all I can say. There's too much meanness out there.
Thanks, John, for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate everything you do.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Take care.